Oh, merge hats. Merge hats. Good morning, Amanda Schmidt, intrepid co-host of Outwit Outlast. If you don't recognize me in my merge hat, my name is Geoff Schmidt, and I'm here to join you as we unpack a very packed episode of Survivor 50. Hello.
Hello, I like your merch hat.
I love your merge hat.
Oh, I adore your merch hat.
I am over the moon about your merch hat.
You can't beat that. So, episode 6, Survivor 50, we have a mega merge. There are 17 people on one beach briefly. They all look for this magical twist, which it turns out is just going to Exile Island with one friend of your choice. Ozzy wins the twist. He takes Rizzo. They're out of commission for the rest of the episode. Meanwhile, we have the Blood Moon, a twist which is ultimately just the same twist we've had for the last 10 seasons, but with 3 tribes instead of 2. So we break out into 3 tribes of 5. Christian, Steph, and Dee win immunity. Their tribes are Orange, Jonathan, Steph, Kamilla, Chrissy, and Tiff. Teal, Dee, Coach, Emily, Suri, and Colby. Pink, or whatever color Geoff keeps calling it. Genevieve, Aubrey, Chris, Rick Devens, and Joe. Steph wins Applebee's for her tribe, and then ultimately Jonathan flips and Kamilla goes home in a devastating twist. More straightforward votes on the other 2 tribes. Teal is picking between Coach and Colby. They send Colby home while he is totally defenseless. Poor guy. And Genevieve really stood no chance on the tribe with Aubrey and Aubrey's 2 benefactors, Christian and Rick Devens. Genevieve played her shot in the dark. It failed. She went home.
Yeah. Hey, pretty good recap.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Uh,
Um,
what are your feelings about the Blood Moon?
I think I just said them in the recap, but my feelings are that they had so much build-up and they came up with this crazy intense name for what is ultimately a twist that we've seen the last 10 seasons. It's just this season it's more people, which means more people are going home, and they were all people I really liked. So overall I am bummed by the Blood Moon, and that's like most of it.
Listen, I had two intense feelings of betrayal. One, I guess, was just on behalf of Camilla.
Yeah.
Jonathan has now completed a heel turn and is a complete villain for me. He always started out that way, kind of, especially after his last season. People forget, especially how poorly he showed up in that tribal when he could have been reflective and grown.
Yeah, the tribal where Marianne called out the race dynamic, and he sort of accused Marianne and Drea of accusing him of racism when he
Yeah,
should have just sat and listened.
yeah, exactly. That's a moment when instead of getting defensive and angry, you can open yourself up to somebody else's lived experience and hear it and honor it and reflect on it. And he chose not to do that then. And all of his tutelage at the feet of Boston Rob seemed to have imparted some lessons in him that are things about Boston Rob that I'm not particularly crazy about this week either. So my most profound sense of betrayal though came at the end of that challenge. Somehow I did not understand until too late that the remaining players weren't all just going to come back into a big group of 15 and vote 3 people out. I thought that was going to be it, and it would have been chaotic for sure. I don't know how they could have done it in a single episode because all of the maneuvering would have been crazy, which is what I was
Yeah.
thinking. Okay, finally, Survivor, the fans have voted. They voted crazy. I voted for crazy. But no, it was just the same damn thing where Geoff Probst just likes his groups of 5 or 6 where nobody can hide. And that was so boring and disappointing in its way.
Just like why even merge? This is always my problem with them immediately
Right.
breaking into these smaller groups.
Right.
And it's like a shitty tribe swap for like there's always I get like everyone has to adapt and sometimes you get a bad luck of the draw with your tribe swap, but usually people have 3 days to try to plan around that. And the only thing that's different about this is that you have like an afternoon and like there's no way Genevieve is going to turn Christian, Rick, Aubrey, or Joe in an afternoon. Like, I think that if she had had more time, she might have at least been able to figure out that it would definitely be her or Joe. And then she could have played that angle. Like, I just think it's a frustrating twist to see them all merge and to see someone set their game up so well, like Genevieve, I think, did, and then have it all immediately fall apart because of this random tribe swap, which is a twist that we have seen before, Geoff. Um,
Yeah. You
yeah, I think it would have been fun if they had done what you thought they were doing. Like, we've never seen them cast two votes for two different people on a single night. You know what
right.
I mean? Like,
Right.
I think having 17 people and they're casting like multiple votes and multiple people go home within the same like actual tribal council would maybe be horrible and chaotic and a terrible idea. But I just feel like they're kind of not as willing to try horrible, chaotic, terrible ideas anymore.
I think you could see a lot of strategy emerge. That's a next level strategy conversation right there.
Yeah,
You're not just trying to persuade people to vote for one person, you're trying to figure out a second person. It's like a ranked voting system, emerging suddenly out of nowhere. I love that. Also, I think
yeah,
more potential for surprises. What the fans are voting for is not crazy advantages and twists. They're voting for surprise. They want to be
yeah.
surprised and to come back to a very dress up an old system. It's not that surprising.
And it led to two really unsurprising votes.
I agree. Although I will say that, I mean, the Genevieve outcome seemed pretty determined, but they did leave room for some interesting maneuvering in that. The
Yeah,
Christians' head shake when Aubrey didn't play the idol
yeah,
was a good moment to underscore. I
yeah,
could see him full of regret at that moment. It occurred to me when they sat down, wait a minute, like they're all just assuming that Aubrey's going to play that idol. Like they set it up. She said she was convincing when she said it, but
yeah,
I thought, wow, this is a good time to pull a Rizzo, and she
yeah,
did, and that was really, I thought that was pretty good. And Genevieve's shot in the dark, and I don't know. There was a little bit of tension even in that obvious outcome, and I thought Colby, in his way, had the same kind of bad luck that Genevieve had.
I
Had he
agree.
had he come into a tribe with three old school players, he would have been fine.
Yeah,
So it really was kind of a luck of the draw thing, and they were both drawing kind of dead, and they were both all of the flaws of their games were really exposed in those new configurations. Unfortunately, that's what I would say.
yeah,
And they
yeah,
both acknowledged them and leaned into them and owned them. They
yeah.
played the game that they played. They played them as hard as they could without regrets. They exited with a lot of class.
I think that the twists not being like creating surprise is frustrating. But I think that the thing that this season is doing well is editing these sequences even when it's a predictable vote out to still have emotional power, still have just enough tension, like what if the shot in the dark worked? Like to have just enough sort of satisfaction that like even when it's a predictable vote, I'm still compelled and I'm still like excited to be watching and I'm still feeling something like that tribal council when Colby went home, even though
Yeah,
it was pretty clear the whole time that Colby went home, like the fact that it was pretty clear kind of just put more weight on that like moment between him and Suri where they like clearly have so much respect for each other, and like she was clearly feeling pretty sad to be the one sending him home, but
Yeah,
also like fully understanding that it was the right thing to do, and he understood that. It was a pretty beautiful moment. So I think that
yeah.
like they should be trying harder. Like, if the fans want twists, I think they should be trying harder to genuinely surprise us and try new things. I think they are probably nervous to try really new things on such a big season. Um,
Yeah.
but I wish they would, but I think they're doing a really good job editing with the sequences that do happen. So I'm not super mad at it.
Well, you're an amazing fiction writer, so I think everybody in the world should know this. If they don't know this about you, watching this podcast, um, I think that you know that what I think I agree with, that the best surprises come from character, not plot
Yeah.
necessarily. Plot should always be the engine for character, or they're interdependent. If if all of the twists come from plot and structure, it feels a little hollow.
Yeah.
If it's all about character, it's going to feel a little bit stagnant. If it's just a character study, it feels insubstantial somehow,
Yeah.
I guess. But
And I think that what this season will always have, and why it will always be a good season, no matter how much they under edit the women or kind of biff the twists, in my opinion, like it has a great cast.
yeah,
So like it's always going to have characters that are going to surprise us.
yeah,
Like even if there were no twists at all, I think that this season would have been a success because you're right, like the twists, the like plot structure that they create like is never going to be as important as just having people there who are making interesting decisions,
yeah,
and like they definitely are.
yeah. Boy, that Colby vote out really was genuinely moving to me. Seeing those genuine tears falling down
Yeah.
to D too was really moving. And when the old school players were talking about what Survivor had meant to them, Colby started it out, then Sari joined in, and then they had a shot of Coach, and you can see him wondering, like, how do I get in on this? You know, and
Yeah.
still accessing that, I think, until Geoff like threw him the question, and he sort of, you know, I don't think Coach has the kind of emotional depth that those other players have, and for some reason he's not showing it particularly. It's all
Yeah, like I think he struggles to show vulnerability and weakness,
yeah,
and that makes it hard for him to be as like moving to watch as like Colby showed a lot of vulnerability. Like I love what he said about how the 50s are the age of reflection.
yeah,
Like you can tell he's really reflecting on himself and his life and like how to be better and how to like find joy in things that he like the last time he was on Survivor he was not finding joy in anything. And
right,
like you can see him growing, and that's really nice.
yeah,
And Coach, I think, is just not like I think Sari has this like shock inside of her that people revere her. Like I think she
uh,
just doesn't she
yeah,
never went into Survivor wanting to be revered one day. Like I don't think that crossed her mind. Maybe she's just really good at fooling everyone that that never crossed her mind, but I think she's genuinely like shocked and confused and touched about that, and I
yeah,
think that is also like a huge vulnerability of hers that she showed so like elegantly in that tribal council. And I think Coach probably did go on Survivor hoping people would revere him and not wanting to show vulnerability, so it's harder for him to like contribute to those conversations like Suri and Colby were in a really genuine way.
yeah.
But I don't know. We spend a lot of time shit talking Coach on this podcast, and truly, I thought he was pretty funny in this episode. I loved the way that he like lied to Dee, was immediately caught in it, and then immediately felt foolish. Like that is a level of like him owning his foolishness is something he would not have done on a previous
That's
season, and
true.
it does show growth to me, and it is showing some vulnerability. So I do think he is becoming more fun to watch for me, and I just don't want to only say negative things about him.
Well, I will, but Also, I forgot a thing about Coach, that the whole appropriation of the feathers in his hair, the cultural
Yeah.
appropriation is really, uh, it reminds me, the thing that I dislike about Coach the most is that he seems to be kind of almost appropriating emotions, like I'm not sure he's ever figured out how to access his genuine self. I don't know. I don't want to psychoanalyze the guy though. And you're right. Like that moment when I actually had a lot more respect for him as a player in that moment when he said, "I've got to do better." Like that was a
Yeah.
bad move. He was capable of self-reflection in that moment. It was gameplay reflection, but it was encouraging. I'm a little bit wary of the clips now of him saying this is war and we're going to get that version of Coach. I don't know. My jury is still out. I don't want to just trash him. I don't find.
Um, I do think it's worth pointing out from our conversation last week the fact that that was the one confessional of him that they included in this episode where he was being self-aware is
Uh-huh.
telling to me. I think they are trying to give him a pretty good edit.
I think you're right. Coach is getting pretty good at it, and I wonder if that's setting something up for the second half of the season. Um, I think Ozzy is getting a good at it, and I
Yeah.
wonder about that. I don't think that Suri is getting much of an edit, and that concerns me. If you're thinking about the sort of the remaining triumvirate of legendary players, those three are it, right? I mean, I know you've got
Yeah.
Stephanie, um, who was a different kind of a consequential player early on, but those three players seem to have the biggest lore, survivor lore, built up
Yeah,
around them.
definitely. And you're right that Coach and Ozzy are getting, I mean, Ozzy is getting the best edit of those three by far. We're
Yeah.
seeing a lot. And what we are getting of Suri is great. And like the when I look at this game, I think she's super well positioned. I love Suri's poly relationship with
Yeah.
Ozzy and Rizzo.
Well,
And I think
true.
they have just enough ties to all these other sort of clusters. Like obviously they're setting up this sort of old school versus new school, and you can, I know you have thoughts about that, but I think that Sari and Ozzy and Rizzo have these nice ties to like several factions of the new school, like Tiff and Dee, but also like Christian and Emily and Rick and their adopted daughter Aubrey, and then like the old school group as well. So I think that they're really well positioned, and I'm hoping we're going to continue to see more of Suri on this season because I love Suri and because I hope she makes it really far. But if we're just looking at the edit, like you're right, we're seeing a ton of Ozzy. And part of that is because Ozzy has been to every vote until this episode. But I am a little worried that that means that of Suri's poly relationship, like she's not
Okay.
going to be the one that actually makes it to the end.
Excuse me. Yeah. Oh no, she's the hinge, and she's going to get removed. Oh well, Rizzo and Ozzy just bonded.
They
So
did.
yeah, maybe maybe it's a true triad now. But
Let's
um,
talk about that sort of old school versus new school thing, though. Jonathan flipping, you said, and I think you're right, was sort of the crux of this episode and is definitely going to carry forward plot, I think, in the next episode or two at least.
yeah, my feelings about that vote shift a little bit every day. At first, I was really angry, not just at the betrayal, but also all of the dynamics around it. When Chrissy says we're cut from the same cloth, I suspect that that is referring to, like, he's not an old school player, but he is like old school players who make alliances that carry through to the end,
Yeah.
or um, who believe in a certain kind of integrity or the something. And I think it was Sari that broke down the new versus old very well.
Yeah.
New school players make alliances for a couple of votes and then shift around, and nobody's feelings are hurt. They expect it. Whereas old school players make an alliance and stick with it to the end. So
Well, and you know what Suri said that I thought she broke it down so well was I think it's not just that it's like alliances are temporary for new school and like long term for old school. I think it's that for new school you can work with your enemy for a vote or two
right,
to advance both of your
right,
causes. But I think that alliances still exist in the new school and enemies
yeah,
still exist in the new school.
yeah,
So I thought that the way she articulated it was so strong because
yeah.
it captured that nuance of like loyalty and alliances and enemies still exist in the new school. It's just a little bit more fluid in terms of when you can work with who.
Yeah, the thing about it is, right now, the old school group, as it's being defined, is older and white. And old school players like Suri and Ozzy don't seem to be included in that old school group, right? And they're players of color. And it seems to me like the racial dimension of the statement and Jonathan's betrayal is hard to ignore, you know. And what Jonathan did was turn on a a group of newer players that are players of color, and it seems to me like that dynamic is troubling. His betrayal, if it is a betrayal, it's a strategic decision, I guess, and he decided to align himself with a group that he thinks will take him further into the game or have less of a chance of cutting him loose earlier. And he might be right about that.
Yeah.
But the lie was shocking. You know, he stated the lie point blank. He held his cards close to his vest, and can't help but thinking that cut from the same cloth statement carries a certain kind of unintentional, maybe, resonance. You know, we're the same because we're sort of older white players, right? So we got to stick together.
Yeah.
In this year, with this political climate, that really rubbed me the wrong way. Um, on the other hand, I mean, not on the other hand, as I think about it and sit with it, I'm surprised by the fact that I didn't see an old player, new player, like conflict being at the heart of this season. For some reason, I didn't think that was going to be the story of the season. But now I think it definitely is. And unfortunately for me, the old versus new now also has those dimensions of gender and race maybe at their heart. So
Yeah. And what I will say about that, like Joe is on that older alliance
that's
and
true.
Joe is not white.
That's true.
And I think it's a more interesting dynamic in terms of old versus new because they have new era players from the last 10 seasons who are part of this sort of old school mentality. Like, I think
Yeah.
that's an interesting dynamic and maybe part of why it wasn't so obvious that this season it would be old school versus new school because it's not broken down exactly on those bounds. But I agree that, like, when you're thinking about old school versus new school, it is hard not to think about the fact that old school Survivor revolved around straight white men. And it was, yeah, like I think that it was a world where it was much harder to be Suri, which is why it's so incredible that Suri has created the legacy that she's created. And I think it's pretty telling that that alliance doesn't include Suri and Ozzy. Like, I think that is an interesting point. Although, I don't think anyone is making decisions based on race
I
consciously,
agree.
and
Agree.
like, I think that there are so many factors that play there because I think it's true that there's just a mindset difference. Like, I think the way that Coach and Colby and Joe and Stephanie want to play the game is really different from the way that Suri and Ozzy want to play the game.
Yeah.
Like, I think Ozzy wants to play super differently from that. Like,
Yeah.
that's how he came in. So I think it's a little hard to tell. Like, it's super hard to parse out all of the different factors that are playing a role in the breakdown
Yeah.
of this season, but it did feel icky to see Jonathan defect to that like old white alliance, especially because of what Kamilla has been saying in the post press. I think that's a pregame alliance. Like that's like the
Yeah.
Zoom alliance.
Uh,
Like I think they decided to work together before the game. And that's a rumor, and
oh,
I haven't read that much into it,
uh,
but
uh,
I think that's another interesting part of the dynamic is like I think because of Jonathan's ties to Boston Rob, he kind of had maybe committed to working with a lot of those folks before
oh.
the game
See,
began.
that gave me a new, that right there gives me a new way to look at that. And I was struck by Jonathan at first talking about how you have to be fluid, you can't just lock in. I didn't understand that what he was talking about was being ready for the moment when he could ally with that older group. I thought he was just talking about within that sort of, new era group being fluid in that way. But he's talking about aligning himself with the older players.
Although I do think he's saying something interesting and beyond what, say, Joe is saying, which is that,
Right.
like, you can't only be honest and integrous and win the game now. Like, there
That's
will
true.
be a lot of people in the jury who really value strategic play.
Yeah.
So I do think it's important for Jonathan to be able to say, I was fluid and I made this strategic decision for this reason. Like, I think if he's going to make it to the end, he does have to do more than honesty integrity, and he knows that, and he's being smart about that.
Here's my follow-up thought to that. Suri is the Jonathan of that tribe. Like Suri was in the middle. She voted against an old school player. She was the swing vote in that vote.
Yeah,
But I don't feel the sense of betrayal with Suri in the same way that I do with Jonathan. And I think that says more about me, maybe, than it does about the facts of those votes,
maybe.
right? And what's really interesting is you had one tribe where an old school player flipped to vote out an old school player. You had one tribe where a new school player flipped to vote out a new school player. And you had a third tribe where everybody was in the middle. They all feel, interestingly, they all feel like sort of middle era players to me. I think we talk about old and new, but there's a whole bunch of seasons, especially Devon's and Aubrey, um,
Yeah.
that feel like they kind of straddle those two schools of Survivor.
Because
And
there were a lot of players since the last big returning player season was 34. There are a lot of players who never got a chance to come back for a second season
right,
until now.
right,
So I think that's why the cutoff kind of feels like it should be around like Chrissy,
yeah,
because everyone Chrissy and beyond really like never got a chance to return.
that was what season was that?
35.
35. Wow, it's really been that long since they had a returning player season.
Edge of Extinction,
Oh
four
yeah,
people came back,
yeah.
and Winners at War was just all winners. So
Oh, that's
no one from 35 through 39, besides a very small subset who could have come back for Edge of Extinction. Although everyone who came back for Edge of Extinction was pre 34, I think, because it was Aubrey, Joe, David from
right,
Millennials versus Gen X,
right,
and Kelly Wentworth.
right.
So yeah, I think there has been no non-winner returning player since before season 35.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that does put a different perspective on. There's 5 seasons, 6 seasons really there of players before the hiatus, before they revamped their approach, before they streamlined the game in some ways, but also I suspect some of the conservative fans that I see online, what they're really railing against is not the shorter season and the fixed island and the food stuff. They're really railing against the diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives
Yeah.
that the producers put into casting and for their own crew, which I
Hmm.
think is the great achievement of Survivor. Um,
Yeah. In the last 10 seasons, that's the best thing they've done. We've had
yeah,
so many incredible players and winners
yeah.
of color, and yeah, it's
Right.
just been so much better because of that. So it is frustrating to see people getting angry about it.
Yeah, so I guess that's the lens that I guess I look a little bit too hard at Jonathan's vote through. Is I see it as a kind of move against diversity in its way, and that's not fair, and it's certainly not done with intent, I think.
No.
So I should probably just sort of note that as a potential motif. I don't know, but I do know that it seems to be setting up um, the true arc of the rest of the season from the promo clips seems to be revolving around that Jonathan vote, and all of the lines seem a little clearer to me now. Um,
Yeah. Although I think it's the people who can move across those lines
yes,
and sort of subtly shift below those lines who will really go far in the game. Like, I think that it's not looking as good for Dee after this episode. It's
right,
not looking as good for Jonathan, frankly, after this episode. But I think like Cerise Polly relationship alliance, and then like Christian, Rick, Emily, and Aubrey, I think
right.
are much more in flexible positions. And I think that certainly this Jonathan betrayal and this like hard line that they're drawing between old school and new school will affect like the next couple episodes. I don't know if that'll be the story of the season,
Huh, maybe not. Um, uh,
but we'll see.
as you say that, I think to myself, okay, you're right. There's really seven players kind of in this middle space.
Yeah, it's like
Lucky.
7 and 7 for me.
I think Rizzo and Ozzy got the best possible gift of the season by being removed from these votes. Not,
Yeah, I know that Ozzy was like joking, oh no, I hope it's not Exile Island, and then it was Exile Island, but I do think that was a huge reward.
yeah.
I had flashbacks to season 41, and I was like, oh God, please tell me they're not going to do another hourglass twist.
Oh, I know. Oh
Um,
my gosh. Yeah. What a
but
twist
this
ever.
worked out great for them.
Yeah, it did. Not just because I think either one of them would have gone home necessarily, although Rizzo certainly does seem to have a target on his back that he may not be aware
Yeah.
of. My thinking is either Jonathan or Dee are going to go far. One side of that battle or the other is going to prevail, but not both.
I really don't want to see Dee go so soon, though. It's been so fun watching her and Suri because they are truly legends of the game for me. And I think
Yes.
seeing Dee on this season and seeing how she has navigated the first half of this game, like, cements that for me. Like, I think she's come in with possibly the biggest target on her backs. She and Suri both, and yet they're like in a pretty central position. Although I do think now that Jonathan has flipped, Dee's position is like a lot worse.
Yeah.
But there are a lot more new school players when you like think about it. If we're including Suri and Ozzy, than there are old school players at the moment. And I think that if Christian and Rick want to flip and get rid of Dee, they're going to tell Emily, and Emily's going to tell Dee. So I think that Dee still has like wiggle room in the game, certainly.
I think it's going to be complicated because Aubrey has already sort of made a loose alliance with Coach. So if it
Yeah.
comes to it, I think Aubrey would go that way. And I think then the numbers skew a little bit more old than new, oddly enough.
I do think it's possible that that old school group will pull in Aubrey, and then Rick and Christian will make a decision to not vote with Emily and take out someone like Dee. Like, I think that's possible. Or they'll just sacrifice Tiffany because it's easier to get people on board for Tiffany.
Yeah,
And that would really disappoint me because I'm so glad we finally got to listen to her talk.
I know.
That was such a nice part of this episode,
Yeah,
even if it was like as she was being betrayed.
yeah. Thankfully, we did get a few of the MIA players like Tiffany and also Chrissy and also Stephanie a little bit. They did get little moments, at least in this episode, that were, yeah, you could hear them say more than a sentence.
Yeah.
or
was
or
nice.
or react silently. you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is another episode that underscored for me your thesis, which is to find ways to reconcile the fact that something that you love can also give you heartburn or worse.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of extra game stuff happening that complicates my viewing of this season. You know,
Yeah.
with Eliza's posts have really changed the way that I'm watching, and honestly, just our political climate changes the way that I'm watching, and
Yeah.
everything that's going on at CBS, etc. You know, it really changes the way that I watch.
But I think you're right that there's like nothing in the world that is not sometimes problematic, and it's a matter of acknowledging the flaws and figuring out if the flaws are too much to make it worth supporting. And if there's still something worth supporting there, then just trying to find the joy in it. I
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe that's why we love certain players so much. Like I loved Dee's season and win because I didn't have many complicated feelings about enjoying Dee's game. You know,
Yeah.
like I just thought she was a terrific player and she played a really great game. You know,
Yeah.
um, maybe that's the ultimate pantheon.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I even am having slightly complicated feelings about Christian. But
It seems like they kind of want us to have complicated feelings about Christian too, which is something
yeah.
I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Like, they're keeping a lot in the edit for Christian. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he is interrupting people, and they're
Yes.
keeping that in the edit.
Yes.
And that's interesting. Like, I still love Christian, but it was a little every time he's a little mean or a little angry, it is surprising and a little sad because of how wholesome and lovely he was on his first season. And I remember reading his pandemic interview, and he talked about one of the things he was proudest of was just always remaining kind to people. So it is like every time I see him a little mean or a little angry, I'm kind of like, that's not the Christian I remember. But at the same time, I think like he's just being a human being. Like everyone is angry and mean sometimes, especially when they have not eaten for 14 days. Everybody gets excited about what they're saying and interrupts someone sometimes. Like I do think that it feels unfair to have these players who we like cast in this like perfect wholesome light, and then we see them like a little angry or like interrupt one person or like vote out one person that we didn't want them to vote out, and suddenly it's like, wait a minute, that's not the Christian I know. Like you can see his popularity going down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like if someone is on their first season one sort of perfect thing, it's really hard for the fans to take them deviating from that. Like I think that there has been
Yeah.
a similar thing with people who we see in their first season as like strategic masterminds, and then in the next season they make like one mistake and suddenly everyone's like, this person sucks, this is so disappointing. Like JT, like
Right.
the time he came back, Heroes versus Villains, he makes that huge mistake. And that's, I don't know, like let him be a human being.
Yeah.
Like of course he's not going to play a perfect game every time he plays Survivor. I don't think that should diminish what a good game he played his first time. And it's sort of weirdly a similar thing with Christian for me, where it's like he was such a good person the first time he played, but like nobody is that good of a person 100% of the time. So like I don't know, we'll see how the rest of the season goes. I'm interested in the fact that they're keeping, like, I'm interested in what they're keeping in the edit with
Yeah.
Christian this time.
Yeah. A character like a character, a player like Colby is showing a real kind of growth and a sense of humility, and he feels genuine in a way that is not a performance. You know, like I
Yeah,
forget who it was. Maybe it was Dee that just said,
D.
I just like him. You know, And maybe what we're talking about is a certain kind of likability. You know, JT in his first season was really, for me, likable. Christian in his first season was very likable. And some of the things that made Christian Christian haven't grown and blossomed. They feel a little bit performative now, you know. Christian's riffs feel a little bit less genuine to me. Um, some,
And maybe they just are, but I think that one thing that I'm saying is like likability feels relative to me on a returning player season. Like
yeah,
Colby came in with a lot of potential for likability because his last season he was so unlikable. So of course he came in and we see him as having grown. Like
right.
that makes sense. Whereas Christian came into this season with very little room for growth in terms of likability. Like he was one of the most liked players to have ever played Survivor.
Yeah,
So I think like relative to his last season, it's always going to be a little bit of a disappointment. Like if we had come into this season fresh with no knowledge of Christian, I don't know if people would have seen him as unlikable. I think people would still see him as likable. They just wouldn't like I think there's this
yeah,
relativity that's interesting there, is all I'm saying.
yeah. I don't know. I got to think about it a little bit more, but I agree with you that the things that they're keeping into Christian's edits are a little bit flawed things about him.
Which I
And
think is good. Like, I like seeing well rounded pictures of real people.
right,
Like, we are seeing good and bad from a lot of people on this season,
yeah,
and that makes it much more interesting to me. I don't miss the days of Survivor when we had a hero and we only saw the good things about them, and we had a villain and we
yeah.
only saw the bad things about them.
I agree with that. I actually think the thing that makes me the most wary or sad is that some players they don't allow that at all. They're
No, I
allowing,
agree.
they're allowing three dimensionality for a certain set of players, but not all the players.
Mostly men.
Mostly men. I agree. Yeah. Uh,
All right. The last thing that I want to say, we
oh,
haven't
good.
talked about fashion on the podcast
We
in a
haven't talked
while,
about fashion in a long while.
and we are seeing Kenzie Petty's legacy on this season of Survivor. She was the only person I've ever seen wear the buff as a bow, and now Genevieve and Tiff, Kenzie's bestie from season 46, are both wearing it, and I think that's great, and I can't believe how much Kenzie has haunted this season, both with her fashion and with her win over Charlie. So that's
Uh-huh.
all I had to say about that.
Yeah. Good. Well, hey, that's a good note. Great fashion note, Amanda. You're a scholar. I wonder if we can someday delve into what fashion reveals about character.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll tell you the fashion note that I have. What the heck is up with Jonathan's strategically ripped t-shirts?
It's like what's with the one where it's just like his like left boob is always out.
I know. I can't believe that that just happened, you know? Like what?
Because did he really like tear that t-shirt in that way on purpose? That feels crazy.
I don't know, man. I don't know. In their ways, they're fashion statements. I don't know what they're saying, but what does the
No,
bow
he does
say?
have a sense of fashion. His sense of fashion is kind of I was a skinny man who like hulked up, and these are the leftover clothes.
Yeah. Well, it does always look like he just hulked out.
Yeah.
Maybe it is a strategy. Maybe he is projecting a persona. But what does the bow say?
The bow says I'm fun and I miss Kenzie.
I miss
The
Kenzie.
bow for Kenzie said I am stylish and there are not a lot of options for style out here and I'm doing the best with what I have.
Okay. Why?
She's
Why
a
do you think?
hairdresser.
Why? That's true. Why do you think Genevieve wore the bow this time?
I don't know. Genevieve is also pretty stylish though, for what it's worth. The
Oh,
red coat.
yes.
I think Bo is like, I'm a stylish person in real life, and I am trying my best to retain that part of myself on this island where I have 5 shirts
100,
max.
100% agree.
All right, well, It has been an interesting merge so far.
Yes.
My big hope for next week is that they just all 14 vote at once.
Yes.
We'll see if it happens.
It won't.
We'll see how things play out. All right. It was great talking to you.
Great talking
Thanks
to
to
you.
everyone who's listening. I'm looking forward to next week. Join us again for more Survivor.
Bye, Amanda. Love you.